There's a golden egg cracking open in front of me. Not chicken-sized, 6 feet tall, and what's coming out isn't a bird. My hands are shaking, not from fear, from something I never thought I'd feel. My name is James, and I'm about to meet my son for the first time. Except, he's already 20 years old. And I only made the deal 6 months ago. They say looking at Medusa turns you to stone. But I looked into her eyes, and I didn't turn to stone. I turned into something far more dangerous. A father. Let me take you back to where this started. 6 months ago, I was bleeding out on a battlefield in Persia. The arrow in my chest had stopped bleeding, which meant I was nearly empty. My fellow soldiers had retreated at dawn, left the wounded behind. Standard practice in war. Save the living, forget the dying. I'd been lying there for 3 hours when I heard footsteps. Not heavy Persian boots, something lighter. Bare feet on blood-soaked ground. She appeared through the smoke like a vision. Pale green skin, hair that moved on its own. Not hair, serpents. Dozens of them. Her eyes glowed like molten gold in the twilight. The Gorgon knelt beside me, completely unbothered by the blood and mud. She'd been watching the battle from the cliffs above. Watched me fight for 7 hours straight. Watched me hold the line even after my captain fled. Watched me take that arrow while protecting a wounded boy who couldn't have been more than 15. Most men would have run, she said. You stayed. That's why I chose you. I managed to croak out one question. What do you want? Her answer was direct. She needed 5 children, not ordinary children. Demigod warriors born from a mortal father and her immortal blood. Born from golden eggs after 9 months. Growing to full maturity in just 12 weeks. 5 sons powerful enough to challenge the Olympian gods themselves. In exchange, she said, I'll give you 3 gifts. Complete healing, enhanced abilities far beyond normal humans. Immortality once all 5 sons are born, and the power to turn your enemies to stone with just a touch. You're insane, I remember saying, blood bubbling up with the words, or I'm already dead and this is some fever dream. She smiled at that. Not cruel, almost sad. You're not dead yet, James, but you will be in about 10 minutes if you don't accept. The arrow pierced your lung. You're drowning in your own blood right now. I can feel your heart slowing with each beat. I asked her why a monster would help me. I meant it as an insult. But she just looked amused. Because monsters understand what it means to be abandoned by those who should protect you. The gods made me this way. Your commanders left you to die. We're not so different, you and I. What did I have to lose? Either she was real and I'd live, or I was hallucinating and would die anyway. I said yes. When Medusa placed her hand over the arrow wound, golden light poured into my chest. The sensation was indescribable. Like drinking sunlight, if sunlight could burn and heal simultaneously. The arrow slid out smoothly. The pain vanished. The weakness evaporated. I took my first full breath in hours. My wounds closed, my broken ribs reformed, even old scars from previous battles faded away like they'd never existed. But it was more than healing. I could see individual grains of sand on a beach 100 yards away, hear ocean waves crashing against rocks miles in the distance. Every sense had been upgraded. What am I now? I asked her. More than you were, she said simply, but not yet what you will be. That night, she led me through valleys and over mountains that seemed to shift and change as we walked. Reality bent around her like she was pulling back a curtain. Forests becoming deserts, deserts becoming cliffs. After hours that felt like minutes, we arrived at an island that didn't exist on any map. The island was beautiful in an otherworldly way. White marble temples crowned the cliffs. Gardens of impossible flowers bloomed in colors that shouldn't exist. Blues that hurt to look at. Reds that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. The ocean around the island was perfectly still, like glass. Not a single wave disturbed its surface. "This is my prison," she said. "Created by the gods after Perseus cut off my head centuries ago. They thought it would contain me, but prisons become fortresses if you're patient enough." Inside the main temple sat a circular pool filled with liquid that looked like melted silver. Moonlight, 200 years' worth, one drop at a time. That night, under the full moon, we entered the pool together. The liquid moonlight was cold at first, so cold it burned. Then it shifted, scorching hot. I felt it seeping into my skin, into my bones, into parts of myself I hadn't known existed. My blood began to glow with faint green luminescence, visible through my skin like I'd swallowed fireflies. I remember screaming, not from pain, though there was plenty of that, but from the sensation of being unmade and remade. I could feel my DNA rewriting itself, every cell in my body being altered, optimized, transformed. The ritual lasted until dawn. When it was over, I collapsed on the marble floor, steam rising from my skin. When I finally looked in a mirror, I saw my eyes had faint golden flecks in them. My skin had a slight shimmer, like light reflecting off water. I was no longer entirely human, but I wasn't a monster either. Something in between. Something new. Medusa told me the next phase would take 9 months. 5 golden eggs would form in a chamber beneath the temple. These eggs would absorb both our essences, growing and developing until they were ready to hatch. And I would need to stay on the island. The eggs required my presence, my energy, my life force. I spent those 9 months learning what I'd become. My strength was now 10 times that of a normal man. I could lift boulders that would have required a team of horses. I could see in complete darkness as clearly as day. My reflexes were fast enough to catch arrows from the air, and my healing. When I accidentally broke my arm during training, I felt the bones crunch together, then start fusing back immediately. Within an hour, completely healed. Not even a bruise remaining. Medusa spent most of those months in the chamber, tending to the eggs, channeling her power into them daily, shaping their forms, giving them the abilities they would need. Some days she emerged barely able to stand, her skin paler than usual, her serpent hair hanging limp. Creating life, she explained, is the hardest magic of all. Sometimes she invited me down to see them. The eggs were remarkable, each one the size of a large barrel, made from what looked like solid gold, but they felt warm, alive. They pulsed with internal light, rhythmic, like breathing. If I put my ear against one, I could hear a heartbeat inside, not one heartbeat. 2, the child's, and something else, something older and more powerful. I spent hours down there, just sitting with them, talking to them. I told them about the world they'd be born into, about the stars and the ocean, about war and peace, about the gods they'd one day challenge. Medusa said they could hear me, that they were learning my voice, even in their shells. I wanted them to know their father before they ever saw him. As months passed, I found myself thinking about these unborn children more than I'd expected. I hadn't planned on being a father, had never wanted children in my old life. Children were liabilities in war. They made you weak, gave you something to lose. But knowing these 5 beings were growing, preparing to enter the world, it changed something fundamental in me. I started to feel protective, possessive even. These were my sons, half my blood, and I would make sure they grew strong enough to survive in a world that would fear and hate them. On the night of the 9th month, the first egg began to crack. Golden light poured through spreading fractures. The egg shook violently, then split open with a sound like thunder. What emerged wasn't a baby. It was a fully formed young man who looked about 20 years old, covered in gleaming fluid that evaporated in seconds. The first son stood on unsteady legs, blinking in the torchlight. He was tall, powerfully built. with my dark hair and Medusa's golden eyes. Scales ran down his arms in intricate patterns, shimmering green and gold, like precious stones embedded in his flesh. When he opened his mouth to take his first breath, I saw fangs, elegant ones, designed to deliver venom with precision. Medusa spoke first, her voice gentle in a way I'd never heard before. "Your name is Drake. You are my first son, born from moonlight and mortal blood, destined for greatness." Drake looked at her, then at me, processing everything with intelligence that seemed beyond his minutes-old existence. His first words were a question. "Are you my father?" I felt my throat close up. I'd fought in dozens of battles, killed men with my bare hands, watched friends die in my arms. But hearing those 4 words from this being I'd helped create, it unmade me in a way nothing else ever had. "Yes," I managed to say. "I am." Drake smiled, and despite the fangs and scales, it was a completely human expression. Warm, genuine. "I know," he said. "I've been listening to your voice for months." Over the next 2 weeks, the other 4 eggs hatched in sequence. The second son was Victor, broader than Drake, with more scales covering his torso and back. The first thing he did was laugh, a booming sound that shook the chamber walls. He was joy incarnate. The third son was Marcus, quieter, more thoughtful. His scales were almost black with hints of deep purple. He spent his first hour examining everything with intense curiosity. The fourth son was Cole. He came out fighting, swinging at the air before he even understood where he was, his fists connected with stone walls, leaving cracks that spiderwebbed across the rock. But when he finally saw me, he immediately went quiet, dropped to one knee like a soldier before his commander. The fifth and final son was Phoenix. He was different from his brothers. Small wings sprouted from his shoulder blades, feathered and golden, not large enough to fly yet. But they would grow. "My masterpiece," Medusa said with undisguised pride. The perfect combination of all his brother's strengths. With something extra. What happened next amazed me more than anything else. The 5 sons began growing rapidly. Within 3 days of hatching, they went from looking 20 to looking 30. Their muscles filled out, their features sharpened, their voices deepened, and their powers manifested. Drake developed the ability to command serpents. Any snake within a mile would obey his thoughts instantly. He tested this by summoning every serpent on the island, and they came. Hundreds of them slithering to coil at his feet. Victor could control water itself, pull moisture from the air and shape it into weapons or shields. Once, he created a sword made of water so compressed it was harder than steel. Marcus could become invisible in shadows. When he stepped into shade, he simply ceased to exist. Sound, smell, physical presence, all of it disappeared. I tried to catch him during training exercises. I never succeeded. Cole's strength surpassed even my enhanced abilities. He could punch through solid stone like wet clay. During one training session, he accidentally destroyed half the training yard, creating a crater 20 feet wide. Phoenix's wings grew rapidly. Within a week, he could fly, soaring over the island in graceful loops and spirals. But more than that, he could regenerate from nearly any wound. Even when Marcus accidentally severed his arm during sparring, it grew back completely within 3 hours. I spent hours teaching them about the mortal world, about war, strategy, survival, about honor and mercy, about when to fight and when to negotiate. Medusa taught them about the gods, about their powers, the hierarchies of Olympus, and about their purpose, because they did have a purpose. And Medusa was clear about this from the beginning. These 5 sons were born to challenge the Olympian gods. Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, and the rest had ruled unopposed for thousands of years. They treated mortals as playthings, punished anyone who defied them without trial or mercy. Medusa herself was proof of the gods' cruelty. She'd been a priestess once, devoted and faithful to Athena. But when Poseidon assaulted her in Athena's temple, Athena didn't punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa, transformed her into a monster, cursed her so that anyone who looked at her would turn to stone, then exiled her to live alone, feared and hunted, and when Perseus came to kill her, the gods celebrated, called him a hero for murdering a victim. "That's what the gods do," Medusa said. "They break you, then punish you for being broken." My sons listened to her stories with growing anger. Drake's fists clenched. Victor stopped smiling. Marcus's eyes darkened. Cole looked ready to fight. Phoenix's wings spread instinctively. I watched them absorb her rage, her purpose. And I realized something that changed everything. The gods didn't curse Medusa to protect the world from her. They cursed her to protect themselves, because she's not building a family. She's building the army that will tear down Olympus itself. My name is James. I made a deal with the Gorgon, and watching my sons take their first breaths, listening to them train, seeing them grow, I know I'd make that deal 1,000 times over. They're my sons, not monsters, not weapons, my sons. But they're also an army, born for war against the gods themselves. And I don't know if I can stop them. I don't know if I want to. 6 months ago, I was dying on a battlefield. Now I'm the father of 5 demigods. The gods have no idea what's coming. And neither do I, but I'll be standing beside my sons when it arrives.